After I left with a broken heart, he insisted I owed him a child. 5 years ago, I told Sincere Thorne I was pregnant. He looked at me with cold indifference, then scoffed as if he'd heard the funniest joke in the world. Get rid of it. A vicious woman like you wants to have my child? Victoria Sterling, are you even worthy? 5 years later, we met again. Now, he's saying I owe him a child and insists I have to give him one. Chapter 1. I saw Sincere Thorne again 5 years later. His fiancée, Lucy Marsh, stormed into my coffee shop and, like a madwoman, started smashing the glass display counters and equipment. Shards of coffee cups littered the floor, beans spilled from their glass jars, and she even shoved one of the coffee machines to the ground, where it bled a pool of brown liquid. After her rampage, Lucy's bloodshot eyes locked onto me, like a vengeful ghost ready to devour its prey. Victoria Sterling, you shameless tramp, you seduced Sincere and killed my sister, and you still have the nerve to come back. Her delicate features were twisted with rage as she panted for breath. I'll make you regret coming back. As if to vent her fury, she knocked over an entire row of neatly stacked coffee cups. The sound of shattering porcelain grated on my nerves. Those were imported cups I had painstakingly selected, and they weren't cheap. The fact that I hadn't called the police on her for this tantrum was an act of mercy. Who's the one doing the seducing? You used to call him your brother-in-law, and now you're his fiancé. Who's the shameless one here? My words hit their mark. She was once Sincere's sister-in-law, and now she was set to be his wife. Shut up! Stung by my words, Lucy flew into a rage, grabbing a cup of coffee from a table and hurling it, contents and all, straight at me. I couldn't dodge in time. The coffee soaked my sweater. The scalding liquid burned my skin, every touch of the fabric feeling like a needle prick. Coffee dripped from my face and hair, leaving me looking as pathetic as a stray dog caught in the rain. I heard the sharp click of expensive shoes on the floor. Sincere Thorne had arrived. I had imagined our reunion countless times. At a gala, on the street, in a mall, but I never thought that when the moment finally came, I would be in such a sorry state. And there he stood, in a perfectly tailored, handmade suit, looking as cold and aloof as ever amidst the wreckage. Sincere's lips curled into a mocking smile, but his eyes were chillingly dark. Lucy is right, Victoria Sterling. Who gave you permission to come back? A shiver ran down my spine. Even after 5 years, his hatred for me hadn't faded in the slightest. Before I could speak, his hand shot out and clamped around my neck. The coffee on my collar stained his pristine white cuff. He was a notorious neat freak, but right now, he didn't seem to notice or care. Victoria Sterling, do you think my words are just hot air? His voice was like ice, and his stare was terrifying. I warned you 5 years ago. If I ever saw you again, I'd make you wish you were dead. His fingers tightened. I could barely breathe. I clawed at his arm, but I had no strength. Lucy stood by, a look of triumphant glee on her face. Just as I thought I was about to pass out, Sincere released his grip. I collapsed to the floor, gasping for air and coughing violently like an asthma patient. He had almost choked the life out of me. He disgustedly pulled off his tie, wiped the stain from his cuff, then tossed the tie to the ground like a piece of trash. His eyes swept over me coldly. 3 days, get the hell out of Metro City. He took Lucy's hand and turned to leave, but I called out to him. Wait a minute. Lucy spun around, her eyes flashing with malice. What more do you want, you tramp? I pointed to the mess on the floor, forcing the words out through my pained throat. Pay up, pay for the damages. Lucy looked like she was about to pounce on me again. Have you no shame? You drove my sister to jump off a building, and you have the gall to ask for money. The sharp pain in my throat brought involuntary tears to my eyes, but I forced myself to raise a hand and point to the security camera above the cash register. There are cameras here. Mr. Thorne, you're a prominent figure in Metro City. I'm sure you wouldn't want this footage to get out, would you? My words sent Lucy into a frenzy. You dare call me a shrew. I'll tear your mouth off. Lucy lunged forward, claws out, but Sincere grabbed her arm. Lucy, calm down. With tears in her eyes, Lucy looked at him pitifully. Sincere, she started it. Sincere's voice softened as he soothed her, gently stroking her hair. It's okay, I'm here. When he turned back to me, his gaze was once again sharp and menacing. 10,000, is that enough? I watched him warily. It's enough. I pointed to the payment QR code. You can scan this. After Sincere paid, he looked down at me with disdain. "Here's 100,000, Victoria Sterling. Take the money and get out of Metro City," he added, "just like you did 5 years ago." Chapter 2. After they left, I began to clean up the wreckage. I was no longer the young girl who would run home and cry after being scolded. As I tidied up, the past slowly began to surface. Sincere Thorne was the heir to one of Metro City's most powerful families, born with a silver spoon in his mouth. 5 years ago, against all odds, he had fallen in love with Lillian Marsh, a woman from an ordinary family, and was determined to marry her. Naturally, the Thorne family objected, doing everything in their power to force Lillian to leave him. Unable to bear the pressure, Lillian eventually broke up with him. After the breakup, Sincere drank himself into a stupor day and night, acting like a madman. That night, he was drunk at a bar again. Our families were old friends, so I had known him since we were children, but I had never seen him so broken. Watching the man I had a secret crush on drown his sorrows over another woman, my heart ached, and I drank a lot myself. Later, he clung to me, refusing to let go, and my own mind was a drunken haze. So when he unbuttoned my shirt and kissed me, I didn't resist. I woke up in the middle of the night in a hotel room. I don't know how Lillian found us. When she saw Sincere and me lying in bed together, covered in marks, she broke down. She ran to the hotel rooftop and jumped from the very top. The hotel was 35 stories high. Her death was horrific. From that day on, Sincere changed. The warmth in his eyes vanished. No matter how I tried to explain, he was convinced that I had schemed to climb into his bed and deliberately lured Lillian there to catch us. Everything was my fault. His revenge was swift and brutal, like a hurricane. He set a series of traps, not only swallowing up my dad's company, but also putting so much pressure on him that he fell gravely ill. I had no choice but to kneel before Sincere Thorne, begging him to spare my family. But he just sneered, his hand closing around my throat. "Your dad's company went bankrupt because he was incompetent. What does that have to do with me? As for you, Victoria Sterling, the moment you schemed to climb into my bed, you should have known this day would come," I cried and begged him. "I'm pregnant. It's your child. My dad is the baby's grandfather." He looked at me as if I'd told the most absurd joke, patting my cheek with contempt. "Have my child? Are you even worthy?" Then he transferred 50,000 to me. "That's for the abortion. Take the money and get as far away from me as you can. Don't disgust me with your presence." Looking at his twisted face, I understood. He truly hated me to the core. With a trembling hand, I wiped away my tears and looked him straight in the eye. "Mr. Thorne, if you want to buy the child in my womb, 50,000 isn't enough." "Then how much do you want?" He spat, his eyes locked on mine. "At least 100,000. I stared back, not flinching. Our gazes could have started a fire. Sincere looked at me with disgust. "Victoria Sterling, you make me sick." But he still transferred the remaining 50,000. I was desperate for money back then. My family was bankrupt, my dad was bedridden, and my mom was on the verge of collapse from exhaustion. But even with that money, my dad didn't make it. Heartbroken, my mother and I moved abroad. We came back this time because Mom missed her homeland and wanted to be near my dad, who was buried here alone. She said she and Dad had been together for most of their lives, and she wanted to be buried with him when her time came. I had hesitated, but I clung to a foolish hope. 5 years had passed. Sincere Thorne must have forgotten about me. After returning, I used the money I had left to open a small coffee shop. My skills were good, the beans were high quality, and the prices were reasonable. After 6 months, the business started to pick up. I let my guard down and began to enjoy life back home. Just when I thought I could live in peace, Lucy Marsh stumbled upon me. Lucy was Lillian's younger sister. 5 years ago, she was just a 16-year-old girl. Back then, she used to say she wanted to marry a man like Sincere when she grew up. We all thought she was joking. I never imagined she would actually take her sister's place and become Sincere's wife. And for a man like Sincere to tolerate a fiancé who acted like a lunatic, was it because he loved Lillian so much that he was willing to care for her sister for the rest of her life? Or had he genuinely fallen in love with Lucy? When my mom came back from picking up Chloe from school and saw the trashed coffee shop, she clutched her chest in anger. Is there no law in the city? Smashing up a shop in broad daylight with cameras everywhere, I helped her to a seat and soothed her gently. They paid $100,000 in compensation. It was a pretty good deal. If they come back to smash it a few more times, we could buy a new house. My mom stared at me, speechless. Is that woman insane? Chloe threw her arms around my neck and asked in her sweet, childish voice, Mommy, why is there coffee in your hair? I must not have washed it out properly earlier. I didn't want to worry them by telling them I'd been doused in coffee, so I said breezily, Mommy just got some on me while cleaning up the shop. Chloe's chubby little hand grabbed a wet wipe and started dabbing at my hair. Mommy, I'll help you clean it. My heart melted. I smiled and kissed her cheek. Thank you, Chloe. Chapter 3. A few days later, Sincere Thorn showed up again. Victoria Sterling, I warned you last time. Don't let me see you again. Mr. Thorn, if you didn't come looking for me, I wouldn't have the chance to be an eyesore to you. Sincere's gaze darkened as he stared at me. A few years apart, and you've certainly developed a sharp tongue. Yes, the girl who once couldn't even speak loudly in his presence had now learned to fight back. He found a seat in the shop. A man of his stature, dressed in a high-end custom suit, looked completely out of place in my humble coffee shop. He glanced at me dismissively. Name your price. How much will it take for you to leave? I pressed my lips together. It's been 5 years, we've both changed. Why are you still holding on to it? He let out a cold laugh. Go on, tell me how you think you've changed. I took a deep breath. You can rest assured, I've learned that you can't force feelings. I don't love you anymore. I definitely won't cling to you obsessively like I did 5 years ago. Hearing my promise, the smile on Sincere's lips slowly faded. Is that so? He said nothing more, just lit a cigarette and studied me thoughtfully through the swirling smoke. I grew nervous, unable to guess what he was plotting. After much hesitation, I decided to say what was on my mind. Sincere Thorn, with your resources, you must have thoroughly investigated what happened back then. I wasn't the main culprit in Lillian's death. You're just shifting all the blame onto me to make yourself feel better. And even if you think I was one of the culprits, haven't I paid a high enough price? My dad died, my family went bankrupt, and I was forced to leave with my mom for 5 whole years, unable to come home. Why won't you just let me go? My eyes reddened. Only my mom and I knew how hard those 5 years abroad had been. The fear from living in a dangerous neighborhood, the exhaustion from working odd jobs everywhere, and the heartbreak of not being able to return home. All of it because Sincere Thorn was convinced I was the one who killed Lillian. Faced with my questions, he remained silent. My heart slowly sank. Just then, a small, sweet voice broke the silence. Mommy, Chloe, in a blue princess dress, rushed into my arms, with my mom following close behind. When my mom saw Sincere, she froze at the door. Sincere shot to his feet, practically grinding his teeth as he demanded, Victoria Sterling, why is she calling you Mommy? Chloe looked up at Sincere curiously. Mommy, who is this uncle? He looks so scary. He's a friend of Mommy's. Mommy needs to talk to him about something. Why don't you go play with Grandma for a bit, okay? I shot a look at my mom, and she immediately took Chloe and left. Sincere started to follow them, but I blocked his path. He grabbed my shoulders, his eyes blazing. Is she my child? Victoria Sterling, how dare you? Sincere's eyes flashed with rage, confusion, and was that a hint of hope? No, I must have been mistaken. How could he possibly be hopeful? He was the one who forced me to get an abortion. The pain in my shoulders made me wince. Sincere Thorn, Chloe is not your child. Sincere sneered. Victoria Sterling, do you take me for a fool? I looked him straight in the eye and said, word by word, from the day I met you until now, I have never lied to you. You just never believed me. She really isn't your child. If you don't believe me, you can get a paternity test. If you dare to lie to me, you know the consequences. With that final threat, Sincere turned and strode away. The next day, my mom went to pick Chloe up from kindergarten. Around 6, she called me in a panic, on the verge of tears. Victoria, Chloe's gone. The teacher said her father picked her up. What father? She doesn't have a father. I told my mom not to panic and to ask the teacher if she recognized the person who took Chloe. The teacher said it was the CEO of the Thorn Group. Because the group had recently donated a new building to the kindergarten, when he claimed to be Chloe's father, the teacher didn't doubt him for a second. Sincere Thorn, it had to be him. I called him immediately. He gave me an address. I closed the coffee shop and took a cab straight there. When I arrived at Sincere's villa, Chloe was sitting happily on the carpet, hugging a beautiful doll and chattering to herself. Seeing me, she scrambled up excitedly, holding the doll up for me to see. Mommy, Uncle Sincere bought me lots and lots of pretty dolls, Chapter 4. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I knelt and hugged her tightly. Chloe, you can't go with strangers anymore, you understand. You scared Grandma and Mommy to death today. Chloe pouted. But Uncle Sincere said you asked him to pick me up. He said you were very busy today. I know Mommy is tired from running the shop. If Mommy didn't have to pick me up, she could get more rest. I was touched, but a chill went down my spine. I turned and met Sincere's deep gaze. Was it my imagination, or was there a trace of tenderness in his eyes as he looked at Chloe? I didn't want to argue with him in front of her, so I pulled him into the backyard. To my surprise, he cooperated, not flinging my hand away, but following me silently. Once the backyard door was closed, I told him again, gravely, Mr. Thorne, I told you, Chloe is not your child. Sincere still didn't believe me. He raised an eyebrow mockingly. If not mine, then whose could she be? Victoria Sterling, you wouldn't have slept with another man. My thoughts were in a jumble, memories of 5 years ago rushing back, and I didn't know where to begin. Just then, his phone rang. It was his assistant. Sincere's expression visibly darkened as he took the call, his jaw tightening. His eyes were fixed on me, filled with fury and shock. I instantly guessed his assistant was telling him about Chloe. Sure enough, after hanging up, Sincere lunged forward and pinned me against the wall. My back slammed painfully against it, and his arm wrapped tightly around my waist. Veins bulged on Sincere's forehead, and every word seemed forced through clenched teeth. The DNA report is back. Chloe is not my child. His gaze grew even darker. Tell me, who did you have her with? I managed a small smile. I told you she has nothing to do with you. She's my child with her father, of course. Sincere's eyes were bloodshot. He asked in a harsh voice, then what about my child? Victoria Sterling, where is our child? That child, a lump formed in my throat. I tilted my head back, forcing the tears back. I looked straight at Sincere, a sarcastic smile on my face, and said, word by word, I got rid of it long ago. He slammed his fist into the wall next to my head, the impact making my ears ring. Victoria Sterling, you dared, the smile remained on my lips, but tears streamed down my face. You were the one who told me to do it. You even gave me $100,000 for the abortion. Why are you pretending to have amnesia now? Why are you so worked up? Could it be that Mr. Thorne regrets it? Sincere's eyes were crimson. He gripped my chin fiercely. Regret? That word isn't in my vocabulary, but what's mine is mine. Even if I don't want it, no one else gets to touch it. He was even more insane, more paranoid than he was 5 years ago. Ignoring the pain in my chin, I said coldly, Mr. Thorne, I'm not your property, I belong to myself. Sincere narrowed his eyes, speaking with pure malice. Oh, is that so? What about when you were chasing after me, impossible to shake off? What about when you pretended to be drunk and climbed into my bed? You weren't saying that then, were you? There it was again. No matter how many times I told him, Sincere was convinced I had been faking it that night, that I was the shameless one who seduced him, the evil one who deliberately tipped off the depressed Lillian to come to the hotel and catch us. After it happened, I was called a murderer more times than I could count. Sincere leaned in close to my ear. His hot breath warmed my skin, but his words were bone-chillingly cold. I still remember how eager and passionate you were that night. I couldn't listen anymore. I swung my hand and slapped him across the face. Sincere clearly hadn't expected me to hit him. He froze for a moment. He touched his rapidly reddening cheek and laughed, a vicious glint in his eyes. Then he grabbed my wrists, twisted them behind my back, and pulled me into his arms. Victoria Sterling, you've grown some courage, haven't you? You dare to hit me? I winced in pain, my body trembling with rage. You're disgusting, despite my insult. Sincere didn't get angry. He raised a hand and gently caressed my neck, then buried his face in the crook of it. The man's fiery breath sent shivers down my spine. His thin lips brushed against my skin as he whispered, as disgusting as I am, weren't you the one who used to chase after me, begging me to love you? Sincere's intimate behavior set off alarm bells in my head. I spoke cautiously. Whatever happened, that's in the past. Right now, I just want to take my daughter home. Sincere lifted his head, staring at me silently for a long moment before finally letting go. Your daughter's father, when can you arrange for me to meet him? I took several steps back to create distance, watching him warily. That won't be necessary. A cruel smile played on Sincere's lips. We slept with the same woman, after all. You could say we have a connection. What's wrong with a little meeting? Chapter 5. I was so angry I wanted to slap him again, but he caught my wrist as soon as I raised my hand. Sincere's eyes were icy, his fingers gradually tightening. Such a scratching cat. If you dare to lay a hand on me again, don't blame me for breaking your fingers, one by one. I froze, silently allowing Sincere to lead me back into the house. In the end, he had his driver take Chloe and me home. My mom was pacing anxiously downstairs. The moment she saw Chloe, she ran over and hugged her tightly. You scared Grandma to death, don't you ever go with strangers again, you hear? Chloe pouted and replied softly, but Uncle Sincere said he's Mommy's friend. And he was really nice to me, he bought me lots of toys. My mom's face changed, and she said with a loss of control, Sincere Thorne is a scumbag, what's so nice about him? Chloe, you're still young, you don't know why Mommy and Grandma ended up. Mom, I cut her off, pulling Chloe, whose shoulders she had gripped, into my arms. Chloe, looking confused and a little scared, shrank into my embrace. I sighed. Don't say these things in front of Chloe, you'll frighten her. Don't worry, Sincere Thorne already knows Chloe isn't his child, he won't take her away again. My mom was silent for a moment, then nodded once she'd calmed down. That's good. She turned to Chloe, stroking her face with concern. It's okay, sweetie. Grandma didn't mean it. Let's go home, and Grandma will make you some sweet tea, okay? After Chloe's obedient reply, my mom turned to me with another warning. And you, stay far away from that brute. Don't be like you were before, running after him the second he gives you a look. She was worrying for nothing. After 5 years and everything that had happened, how could I possibly be that foolish girl again? But for some reason, I had a feeling this wasn't over. Soon, the weekend arrived. Chloe's kindergarten was out, and Peter Finch came to take her to Disneyland. Peter was a friend I'd met while working abroad 2 years ago. Over those 2 years, he had helped my family and me a great deal, giving us a rare sense of warmth while we were far from home. 6 months ago, when my family decided to move back to Metro City, I thought we'd rarely see him again. But unexpectedly, not long after, Peter was also transferred back by his company to a senior management position in the Metro City branch. Chloe had always adored him, sweetly calling him Daddy Peter. I had told her many times not to call him that, but the little one would look at me with a pout and say, all my classmates have daddies. Why don't I? Her words tugged at my heart, and I would stroke her little head, not knowing how to answer. Peter would quickly smooth things over with a smile. A godfather is a daddy too, let her be happy. I felt a little guilty and said with concern, you're a young, single, eligible bachelor. Don't let this little girl ruin your love life. Peter waved his hand dismissively. What love life? Don't you worry about me. He was too modest. A handsome and gentle young man like him never lacked for admirers. The last time his mother arranged a blind date for him, the woman was very taken with him and wanted to see him again. On their second meeting, he unexpectedly brought Chloe along and had her call him Daddy in front of the woman. It scared the poor girl off, thinking she was about to become a stepmother. She immediately canceled the date and left with a stiff face. When I found out, I couldn't help but tell him that was a bit much. But Peter shook his finger with a serious expression. You don't understand. When dealing with my matchmaking-crazed mother, you have to use extreme measures. After getting Chloe's water bottle and little backpack ready, my mom and I took her downstairs to meet Peter. The little one skipped over to her Daddy Peter and was swept up into his arms. Let's go. My little princess daddy's going to have a fun day with you today. I watched them play for a moment with a smile, about to head to the coffee shop, when my mom stopped me. Victoria, the part-time student, and I can handle the shop today. You should go out and have some fun too, relax a little. I hesitated. Mom, not only is it Saturday, which means the shop will be busy, but you also need to buy tickets for Disneyland in advance. Even if I wanted to go, I probably can't. The hope in Chloe's eyes immediately dimmed. Peter smiled and stroked her head reassuringly. Don't worry, Mommy can come. Daddy Peter bought several tickets. Hearing that, my mom practically pushed me into the car with them. So, in the end, I went to Disneyland with Peter and Chloe. Chloe walked between Peter and me, beaming with joy. She held a cotton candy in one hand and a little bunny balloon in the other, asking in her sweet voice, "Daddy, Mommy, can we come out to play every day?" I tapped her little nose and said heartlessly, "You still have to go to kindergarten." Chloe pouted angrily. "But why don't grown-ups have to go to school?" Peter ruffled her hair affectionately. "Because while you're at school, we grown-ups have to work." Chloe pouted again, then dropped the subject and focused on finding her favorite cartoon characters. After 2 hours of walking, Chloe's excited little voice was getting hoarse. Peter and I took her to a bench to rest, letting her drink some water and have a snack before continuing. Just as Peter was wiping sweat from Chloe's forehead while she drank from her water bottle, a sharp, familiar female voice came from nearby. "Victoria Sterling?" I looked up and saw Lucy Marsh walking towards us, arm in arm with a cold-eyed, sincere Thorne. Why did I have to run into him everywhere? My first instinct was to grab Peter and Chloe and leave, but an enraged Lucy was already in front of me, pointing a finger at my nose. "You still dare to be in Metro City, staging a chance encounter all the way out here, and with a little bastard in tow. How can you be so shameless?" Peter immediately stepped in front of me and Chloe, frowning. "Miss, please show some respect." The sight of me seemed to have energized Lucy, and her pretty face was twisted with excitement. She pointed a trembling finger at my nose and spat. "I can respect anyone, but I will never respect this shameless bedhopper, the murderer who killed my sister." After saying that, she looked Peter up and down scornfully, then glanced at me meaningfully. "Heth, Victoria Sterling, is this the new man you crawled into bed with?" Peter's brow furrowed, and his usually gentle face showed a rare flash of anger. "Are you crazy? What kind of nonsense are you spouting?" My first move was to cover Chloe's ears. She looked up at me, her eyes a little frightened. "Daddy, Mommy, that lady is so mean. Chloe doesn't like her." Before Lucy could lash out at Chloe for calling her mean, Sincere, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "So it's him?" He scanned Peter from head to toe with a cold expression, then let out a sneer. "Your taste in men is decent, I'll give you that." Sincere's dark gaze shifted to me, his tone filled with menace. "But it's a pity he set his sights on someone he shouldn't have." Chapter 6. After returning from Disneyland, I was racked with anxiety and worry. Sincere Thorne wouldn't let this go. Once he targeted someone, they were guaranteed a miserable fate. The very next evening, he showed up at my coffee shop. I was just about to close up and go home when he pushed the door open, reeking of alcohol. He loosened his tie as he pinned me against the wall. The overpowering smell of liquor and smoke hit me, making me feel nauseous. I struggled desperately to break free from his grasp, but he pressed his body closer, leaving almost no space between us. I grabbed his tie, my voice tight with suppressed anger. "Let go." Sincere effortlessly retrieved his tie from my hand, tossing it aside. His voice was low and hoarse. "No." I couldn't push him off. The more I pushed, the tighter he held me, his entire body pressing against mine. I gave up the futile struggle with the drunkard and asked directly, "What do you want?" Sincere's deep eyes stared at me, filled with a complex mix of emotions I couldn't decipher. "Why isn't he here to pick you up? Or is he waiting for you at home? Who?" It took me a moment to understand. His tone was impatient. "Don't play dumb. The man you were with yesterday." So he was talking about Peter. I pressed my temples and took a deep breath. "Mr. Thorne, that has nothing to do with you, does it?" Sincere gave a cold laugh. "Who gave you the nerve to speak to me in that tone?" "I've already had him investigated. Chloe is on your household registration with your last name, Sterling. And Peter Finch is still single. He was even going on blind dates recently." He paused. "So, whose child is Chloe, really?" When I didn't answer, his tone grew nastier, his words more hurtful. "Besides me, how many other men have you seduced with those tricks?" His malicious insults made me tremble with rage. "Get lost. Did I hit a nerve? Is that why you're so angry?" Sincere's voice was chilling. "Victoria Sterling, just how desperate are you? Do you have to throw yourself at every man you see?" I struggled in a fit of anger and desperation, kicking and punching, but the difference in our strength was too great. He quickly overpowered me. I glared at him with hatred. "How many men I've been with is none of your business. Get out. I don't want to see you again." Sincere's eyes darkened instantly. He grabbed my face, his voice filled with fury. "Didn't you used to say you loved me so much you could die? And in the blink of an eye, you're hooking up with another man. Victoria Sterling, you really are a tramp. I couldn't break free, couldn't escape. Humiliated and furious, tears streamed down my face, falling onto the back of his hand. But he still wouldn't let me go, looking at my tears with disgust. Don't play the victim. That act doesn't work on me. Sincere tilted my face up as he leaned down, his lips hovering just inches from my cheek. Why don't you be a little more proactive, like you were that night? If you please me, maybe I'll consider letting you go. I couldn't believe it. How could the man I once loved so deeply have become so repulsive? Or perhaps this was his true self, and I had simply been blind to it before. That blindness had brought disaster upon my family and me. Shameless vile brute, I cursed Sincere through gritted teeth. Seeing my defiance, his eyes blazed with anger. He said viciously, "You think I'm shameless? Fine. Today I'll show you what shameless really is." Sincere's lips finally crushed down on mine. His strong fingers gripped my face as his tongue forced its way past my lips, and the bitter taste of alcohol instantly filled my mouth. I could barely breathe, and the tears fell even faster. As the oxygen in my lungs dwindled, in a moment of panic, I bit down hard on his tongue. The metallic taste of blood immediately spread through my mouth. Sincere cried out in pain and released me. He touched his lip, looked at the blood on his fingers, and snarled, "Victoria Sterling, are you a fucking dog?" Tears still clung to my lashes as I parted my swollen lips and retorted, "I'm not a dog, but you're worse than one." Sincere's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You're just asking for it today, aren't you? You know I respond to kindness, not force, and you still dare to defy me?" He responds to kindness. What a joke. Back then, I loved him so much I would have torn my heart out for him, and it didn't earn me a shred of compassion. Sincere continued his threats. "That Peter Finch seems to care about you a lot. But men are the best at putting on an act. How about I test his devotion for you?" The implication in his words sent a jolt of fear through me. Sincere's methods were notoriously ruthless. Peter, with no powerful family background, was no match for him. I grabbed Sincere's arm and said sharply, "Don't you touch him, this is between us. It has nothing to do with him," but Sincere paid no attention. He pulled his arm free, straightened his clothes, and walked out. Not long after, news came that the project Peter was in charge of had run into serious problems, and the head office was going to hold him responsible. If the company demanded compensation, he would likely be ruined, even if he sold everything he owned. I was incredibly worried. I sent him several messages, but he just replied that he was fine and would handle it soon. But I couldn't shake my unease. If Sincere Thorne was behind this, then Peter was suffering because of me. I couldn't accept a friend being dragged into this mess because of me. After much hesitation, I called Sincere. The phone rang only a few times before he picked up, his magnetic voice coming through the line. "Well, this is a surprise. I see you haven't forgotten my number." I had no time for his games. I got straight to the point and asked if he was behind Peter's work problems. To my surprise, he denied it. I was skeptical. Every time he threatened to go after someone, they ended up in trouble soon after. If it wasn't him, the timing of Peter's troubles was far too coincidental. Sincere's mocking laugh came through the phone. "I've been out of the country on business for the past 2 weeks. I haven't had time to deal with him. But you've just given me an idea. I'll be sure to give him my full attention when I get back." Chapter 7. 2 weeks later, the moment Sincere Thorne's plane landed, he came looking for me. He seemed to be in a good mood. He even ordered a coffee at my shop, took a few sips, and for the first time ever gave a compliment. Not bad. I watched him cautiously, wondering what he was plotting now. He stared back at me with amusement. "Wanna guess how much your dear Peter loves you?" My heart sank. I came out from behind the counter and stood before him. "What did you do to him?" Sincere leisurely lit a cigarette, his deep eyes filled with mockery. His project was a real mess. If he couldn't fix it, he was looking at getting fired and sued by the company. So, out of the goodness of my heart, I helped him sort it out, and I even threw in a promotion to general manager for him. Hearing this, a sense of foreboding washed over me. Sincere continued, "Guess how grateful he is to me now?" When I didn't respond, he didn't seem to mind and went on, "That Finch fellow promised me he'd never contact you again." "Heth, and I thought he loved you so much. Turns out he's just like the rest." After saying this, Sincere studied my pale face for a moment, then grunted with satisfaction, stood up, and left. I didn't go to Peter for confirmation. But the next time I asked about his company, I noticed his attitude was significantly colder, the former warmth gone. I said nothing. He was silent on the other end for a moment, then said, "I'm sorry, Victoria. My career is too important to me. I can't lose this job. We shouldn't contact each other anymore, just delete my number." I gripped my phone, a bitter smile on my face. "You don't have to apologize to me. After all, I'm the one who dragged you into this. I was happy to have known you. I hope your career goes well." After hanging up, I couldn't calm down for a long time. Everything I was experiencing now felt just like 5 years ago when the Sterling family went bankrupt. All the friends and relatives who had once been so warm and caring vanished overnight under Sincere's pressure. I put down my phone, the fist I'd clenched so tightly leaving painful marks on my palm. I felt so powerless. Why was Sincere Thorn so determined to destroy me? Was I not even allowed to have a single friend? After that day, Chloe kept asking me why Daddy Peter hadn't come to see her lately. Looking at her hopeful eyes, I could only tell a half-truth. Uncle Peter had to move back abroad for work. He probably won't be coming back again. "Chloe, you have to be a good girl. We can't bother Uncle Peter anymore, okay?" Chloe was sad for days, listless and without her usual energy. It wasn't until this Friday, when I went to pick her up from school, that I saw a long-lost smile on her face. From a distance, I saw her holding hands with a little boy, skipping out of the school building like a pair of happy bunnies. Chloe waved goodbye to her teacher with the little boy, then ran and threw herself into my arms, her eyes sparkling. "Mommy, look, this is my best friend, Aaron." The little boy was exquisitely handsome and looked vaguely familiar, though I couldn't place him. He looked up at me and said in a sweet, childish voice, "Hello, ma'am. My name is Aaron Croft. I'm Chloe's best friend. Hello, Aaron. I'm Chloe's mom. It's very nice to meet you." I smiled and knelt, taking out the snacks I'd prepared for Chloe and letting them share. I played with the two little ones at the kindergarten gate for a while, but the boys' parents never showed up. I couldn't help but ask, "Aaron, where are your mommy and daddy? Why haven't they come to pick you up yet?" Aaron's smile froze and his expression turned sad. "Daddy is very busy with work. It's always Auntie June who picks me up. My mommy?" He looked down, his voice growing smaller. "I don't know where she went." I chided myself for asking the wrong question and quickly apologized. But Chloe patted Aaron's shoulder and said heroically, "It's okay, I don't have a daddy either. I can share half of my mommy with you, and you can share half of your daddy with me. That way, we both have a mommy and a daddy." Aaron's eyes instantly lit up. "Chloe, you're so smart." Their innocent words made me want to laugh and cry at the same time. I gently put a stop to their parent-sharing plan and saw Aaron off to his family's car. But what I didn't expect was that Aaron's father was none other than Julian Croft, Sincere Thorn's lifelong rival. I ran into Julian at the kindergarten's Children's Day festival. He had taken time off to celebrate with Aaron. He was just as surprised to see me. After the performance, the Croft family's nanny took the two children to play, while Julian invited me to a nearby cafe for a cup of coffee. Is the child Sincere Thorn's? The story of Sincere and me was well known in the upper circles, so his question wasn't surprising. I shook my head. She's not his. Julian had only asked because Chloe and Aaron were good friends. Hearing my answer, he smiled slightly. That's for the best. Otherwise, I'd have a real headache. As you know, I can't stand that arrogant poser who looks down his nose at everyone. Julian and Sincere had been at each other's throats since they were kids. From their school days to entering the business world, they were always competing, vying to be number one. Because I used to have a crush on Sincere and followed him around, I never had much interaction with Julian. But I was somewhat familiar with Julian's ex-wife. Thinking of Aaron's features, I asked, "Is Aaron your son with Eliza?" He nodded. "Yes, but we divorced a long time ago." I was a bit surprised. In my memory, their relationship had seemed stable. I never thought they would divorce after having a child. Julian saw my confusion and explained briefly, "We're both too strong-willed. Neither of us would back down. We couldn't make it work, so we divorced amicably." The Eliza Vance I remembered was indeed a formidable, powerful woman. I nodded and didn't press further. As we talked, the sky darkened and Julian offered to drive Chloe and me home. I was about to refuse, but Chloe didn't want to leave Aaron and wanted to play with him a bit longer on the way, so I relented. While driving, Julian looked at the two little heads huddled together in the back seat and couldn't help but tease. It's a good thing Chloe isn't Sincere Thorne's kid. Otherwise, she'd be fighting with my son for sure. His words made me laugh, and I turned to look at Chloe. She had always been a sensible child. Because she had moved around so much with my mom and me, she never had a lasting playmate. This was the first time she had told me she had a best friend. The car stopped at the entrance of my apartment complex. I was holding Chloe and about to say goodbye to Julian and his son when Julian suddenly looked behind me and raised an eyebrow. Looks like I won't be leaving for a while. Chapter 8. I followed his gaze and saw Sincere Thorne striding towards us, his face a thundercloud. In the dim light of evening, his expression was terrifyingly dark. The moment these two lifelong rivals met, the air crackled with hostility. Sincere spoke with dripping sarcasm. Well, Mr. Croft, got nothing better to do? Thinking of a career change to a nanny? No wonder you lost the last project bid to my Thorne group. Julian shot back without missing a beat. I certainly can't compare to Mr. Thorne. After all, not everyone can be as ruthless and heartless as you, to abandon your own child without a second thought. A dangerous glint flashed in Sincere's eyes, and his face completely darkened. But Julian just smirked and continued, his words gaining momentum. What's wrong, Mr. Thorne? Regretting it? I remember a saying, something about how delayed affection is cheaper than dirt. He paused, then added, No, my mistake. The word affection doesn't apply to Mr. Thorne at all. Doesn't that make you worse than a dog? The power of a true rival was formidable. Sincere was so enraged his face turned green. Seeing him so flustered for once was strangely satisfying. I couldn't help but give Julian a thumbs up and whisper, Well said. Sincere immediately whipped his head around to glare at me. Victoria Sterling, do you think I'm deaf? I looked up at the sky awkwardly. You're not deaf, but you never listened to me before either. Julian burst out laughing. Oh, Mr. Thorne, not even 30 and your hearing is already going. Should I recommend a specialist for you? Hey, where are you going? You can't just ignore your health problems, Mr. Thorne. After being ganged up on and thoroughly humiliated by Julian and me, Sincere stormed off. The next day, he sent his assistant to my coffee shop to deliver a message. I was to stay away from Julian Croft. The assistant looked like he was about to collapse, practically begging me as he spoke. Miss Sterling, you know Mr. Thorne's temper. Why provoke him? When he's unhappy, we all suffer. Life has been absolute hell recently. Sincere hadn't come himself. The assistant explained he was at the hospital taking care of Lucy, who was admitted for her depression. How laughable. His fiancée was in the hospital, and he still had the time to send someone to warn me. And looking at Lucy, it seemed less like depression and more like full-blown mania. Though I pitied the assistant, I wouldn't back down to Sincere Thorne. Please inform Mr. Thorne that who I choose to be friends with is my own business. He has no right to interfere. I don't know if the assistant ever relayed my message, but Sincere miraculously quieted down for a while. The next time I saw him was 2 weeks later. Sincere looked exhausted, with fresh stubble on his chin, though it did little to diminish his handsome features. But his words were as arrogant as ever. He walked in and immediately ordered me to make him a coffee. I pointed to the payment code. Pay first. Sincere's face tightened, looking displeased. It's just $20. I put on a fake smile. $20 is still money. You're a CEO. Surely you're not going to stiff me, are you? Sincere glared at me, took out his phone, and paid. He sat down near the counter. He rested his head on his hand, watching me make the coffee, his voice unreadable. I hear you've been getting quite close to Julian Croft lately. So he was here to interrogate me. I continued working the machine, replying coolly, Who I befriend has nothing to do with you, Mr. Thorne. Sincere scowled and sat up straight, clearly unhappy with my attitude. You can be friends with anyone you want, except Julian Croft. In truth, my interactions with Julian were mostly because of Chloe and Aaron. We weren't that close ourselves, but Julian and I were on the same page about one thing: we loved getting under Sincere's skin. I placed the finished coffee on the table and looked down at Sincere, who was seated on the sofa. Why should I listen to you? Can you take down Julian Croft the way you took down Peter Finch? Oh, right, I forgot. He's the CEO of Croft Corporation. He won't be swayed by your petty favors. Sincere stood up, his gaze as sharp as a knife. Victoria Sterling, don't test my limits. If you anger me, you will regret it. There he was with the threats again. I was getting tired of it. I impatiently changed the subject. Your fiancé is in the hospital with depression. You have so much free time, why aren't you with her? Just get out. I couldn't stand the sight of him. If Sincere said one more thing, I was afraid I'd grab the coffee and throw it in his face. Sincere irritably walked around the table to stand in front of me, his voice tight with suppressed anger and tension. I never admitted she was my fiancé, and I have no plans to get engaged to anyone. The word fiancé had come from Lucy herself. But I didn't care about Sincere's bizarre explanation. She's still your girlfriend. Sincere frowned, his eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't decipher. I have never touched her. Lillian entrusted her to me before she died. I've only ever looked after her as a sister. For one sentence from Lillian, he would spoil Lucy to the heavens. You had to hand it to him, he was truly devoted. I gave a cold "oh." So what does that have to do with me? Even if you get married and have a dozen kids, it has nothing to do with me. At the mention of children, my heart began to ache again. 5 years ago, when I found out I was pregnant, I was filled with joy and anticipation. But that was quickly overshadowed by my family's bankruptcy and my dad's hospitalization. To save my dad, I swallowed my pride and used the baby to beg Sincere for help. Instead, he ordered me to get an abortion in disgust, saying someone as repulsive as me didn't deserve to have his child. Whatever love I once had for him had vanished 5 years ago, along with my baby and my dad. Sincere suddenly leaned in, interrupting my thoughts. His eyes were filled with disbelief. You really don't care. I fought back the pain of the memories and said, word by word, that's right, I don't care, because I don't love you anymore. Sincere's body went rigid for a moment, then he let out a cold snort. You don't love me. Then who do you love, Peter Finch or Julian Croft? As he spoke, he watched my expression intently, trying to read my true thoughts. I took 2 steps back away from him and said without a trace of emotion, it doesn't matter who it is. It just won't be you. Sincere's eyes turned cold and he laughed in anger. Are you trying to provoke me? Fine, Victoria Sterling. I'll be waiting for you to come begging, Chapter 9. The next day, before I could even open for business, my landlord showed up. He informed me he was raising the rent to an astronomical figure. My revenue for the past 6 months wouldn't even be enough to cover it. No matter how I pleaded or threatened to sue him for breach of contract, the landlord wouldn't budge. I had no choice but to look for another location. But every time I was about to sign a lease, the landlord would suddenly hike the price. It didn't take a genius to figure out that Sincere Thorne was pulling the strings. After failing to secure 5 different locations, I gave up looking. If someone was going to sabotage me, then I might as well not open the coffee shop at all. Besides, the $100,000 I got last time would be enough for my family to live on for a long while. But Sincere was relentless. He called me. Have you learned your lesson? If you beg me now, it's not too late. I could hear the smugness in his voice even through the phone. The more he acted like this, the more I wanted to defy him. I deliberately provoked him. I don't need your help. I can just ask Julian. Although my relationship with Julian was just that of our kids' parents, and he might not even help me, it was enough to make Sincere miserable. The breathing on the other end of the line grew heavier. My words had clearly ignited Sincere's anger. He said through gritted teeth, I'm giving you one last chance. You'd better think carefully. My response was to hang up the phone. To make the act convincing, I really did go to Julian for help. To my surprise, he agreed immediately, saying he had a few vacant commercial properties in the city center and that I could pick one. He even personally accompanied me to see the spaces. Each one was in a prime location with basic renovations already completed. By the time we had seen all the properties, most of the day had passed. I asked, a little embarrassed, did I take you away from your work today? Julian waved his hand casually. I'm not a workaholic. This was a good chance to get out and clear my head. I finally chose a shop near a university. After signing the contract, Julian suddenly asked, aren't you curious why I'm helping you? I was indeed a bit puzzled. Why? Don't you think Sincere Thorne actually cares about you a lot? Julian's lips curved into a slight smile. The closer I get to you, the more annoyed he becomes. And we worked so well together last time, we pushed Sincere right to his breaking point. Cares about me? I gave a bitter laugh. It was more like he wanted to torture me. I'm afraid you've misjudged, Mr. Croft. The only person Sincere cares about now is probably Lucy Marsh. But Julian countered with certainty. The person who knows a man best is always his rival. If you don't believe me, why don't you play along with me and see how Sincere reacts? To prove his point, he invited me to accompany him to a banquet that evening. I wanted to refuse, but thinking about how he had spent half the day showing me shop locations and had solved my urgent problem, I agreed to this small request. Pleased, Julian took me to a high-end mall owned by his family to buy a gown. In the boutique, a sales associate with a sweet voice greeted us. After hearing Julian's request, she quickly selected several evening gowns that would suit me. I tried them on one by one and finally settled on a mermaid-style gown in a deep emerald green. The associate had a keen eye. The dress was perfect for me. The emerald green made my skin look even fairer, and the mermaid cut accentuated my figure, making me appear taller and more slender. Looking at myself in the mirror, I felt a twinge of unfamiliarity. Since my family went bankrupt, it had been a long time since I had worn such a formal gown. These past few years, I had been struggling to make a living and raising Chloe, so I rarely even wore high heels. Today, when I tried on the 8-centimeter heels the associate had paired with the dress, I nearly stumbled after just 2 steps. Julian, who had been by my side, quickly steadied me. He chuckled and asked the associate to bring a pair of 5-centimeter black satin heels, which also matched my dress perfectly. After settling on the outfit, Julian took me to his personal styling team for makeup. An experienced makeup artist created a slightly vintage look for me that complemented our attire. She used minimal eyeshadow, focusing instead on defining my eyebrows and eyeliner, finishing with a velvet-textured lipstick. My hair was styled into large waves. When everything was ready, a flash of admiration crossed Julian's eyes. He then elegantly offered me his arm. I was a bit nervous, but he said naturally, "You're my date tonight. We can't look like strangers, can we?" I mentally chided myself for being so stiff and took his arm. The banquet hall was filled with dazzling lights and distinguished guests. It was the kind of high society event I hadn't attended in 5 years. And Julian, as always, became the center of attention the moment he appeared. Thinking about the former friends and relatives I might encounter, my hand involuntarily tightened on his arm. Sensing my unease, Julian leaned in and whispered, "Relax, I'm here. Besides, you look beautiful tonight." I relaxed a little and smiled at him. "Thank you." I pushed all other thoughts aside and walked into the banquet hall with him. Because my past with Sincere was common knowledge in these circles, it wasn't long before people recognized me and started speculating about my relationship with Julian. Listening to the whispers, my palms grew clammy with sweat, but a warm hand gently patted mine. "What are you nervous about? You did nothing wrong back then." I looked at Julian with concern and asked, "Will this cause trouble for you?" He looked completely unfazed. "Don't forget, I was the one who invited you. Besides, in Metro City, there aren't many people who dare to cause trouble for me." That was true. As we were talking quietly, Lucy Marsh, on Sincere Thorne's arm, walked towards us. This time, she didn't start screaming at me as she usually did, probably aware that such behavior was unacceptable at a formal event. But the look in her eyes was still full of hostility. It was Sincere who spoke first. He glanced at me coldly, then turned to Julian with a sneer. "I never thought your tastes were so low, Mr. Croft. You're actually willing to pick up someone else's second-hand goods." The moment he finished, Lucy laughed triumphantly. His words stung, and my face went pale. Julian, feeling my hand tremble, squeezed it tightly and retorted with calm composure. "It seems, Mr. Thorne, that you're not only stuck in the dark ages but also blind. You talk like an old crone, and you seem to have a talent for treasuring garbage." Being called garbage made Lucy's face turn livid. She was about to erupt when Sincere, his face grim, held her back. Ignoring them, Julian took my hand and led me away, asking softly as we walked, "Why are your palms so sweaty again? Do you need a shawl?" I managed a weak smile. "I'm fine, just a little nervous. I'm not cold." Julian patted the back of my hand reassuringly. "I'm here, don't be afraid." His deep gaze rested on me, giving me a strange sense of security, and the heaviness in my heart lifted. Julian then took me to the dessert table to get something to eat, and we found a quiet corner to have a snack. Soon, the banquet was in full swing, and Julian had to go speak with some family elders. I went out to the back garden for some fresh air. There was a reflecting pool on one side of the garden, and it was completely deserted. I stood by the pool, lost in thought for a while. I wasn't waiting for Julian, but instead, Lucy showed up. Chapter 10. Before she could explode, I spoke first. "You're here with Sincere Thorn. I assume you don't want to embarrass him, do you?" Lucy reluctantly lowered the hand she had raised to slap me, but her words were still sharp. "I'm really curious what your secret is. First, you seduced Sincere, and now you've climbed into Julian Croft's bed. Why don't you teach me your tricks? Maybe it would help me and Sincere get closer." I wasn't going to coddle her like Sincere's circle did. I went straight for the jugular. "You want to learn so badly? Could it be that you've tried to climb into Sincere Thorn's bed, but he won't touch you?" Lucy's face changed dramatically. She pointed at me, her voice shrill with fury. "What are you so proud of, you tramp? Do you think everyone is as shameless as you?" I snorted. "Sincere Thorn told me himself that he's only ever seen you as a sister. He's never liked you. We're both in the same boat. Why can't you understand that his heart only belongs to your sister, Lillian?" Lucy's face grew uglier with every word I spoke. Feeling a small sense of satisfaction, I continued to provoke her. "He also said you're too willful and have been nothing but trouble for him all these years. If it weren't for Lillian, he wouldn't even bother with you." Lucy's eyes turned crimson. She suddenly went berserk and shoved me towards the pool. I lost my balance and stumbled backward into the water. As I saw the twisted, triumphant smile on Lucy's face, I desperately grabbed her arm and pulled her in with me. The pool was deep, and my waterlogged dress felt like an anchor, dragging me down, and I couldn't swim. But Lucy was a good swimmer, and her dress wasn't as heavy. As she climbed out onto the bank, I was still flailing in the water. I had already swallowed several mouthfuls of water. The heavy dress and the cold water were rapidly draining my strength. I struggled to get my head above the surface and cried out. "Help!" Lucy, shivering on the bank, didn't leave immediately. Instead, she watched my pathetic struggle and laughed maniacally, making no effort to call for help. As I sank beneath the surface, exhausted, I thought I was really going to die here. Thankfully, someone jumped into the water just in time and pulled me out. A familiar voice called my name anxiously. "Victoria, wake up," it was Julian. He was performing chest compressions, helping me cough up the water I had inhaled. Then, something warm and soft pressed against my lips, and a breath of air was passed into me. After a while, I slowly opened my eyes. I was still dazed, but I vaguely saw Sincere Thorn pull Julian off me and punch him in the face. Julian, not one to back down, hit him right back. I struggled to sit up. Listening to the chatter of the people around us, I realized that Sincere had arrived just as Julian was giving me CPR. The man had lost his mind again, attacking Julian without a second thought. Fighting the urge to cough, I propped myself up and stood between them, pointing at Lucy. "Sincere Thorn, before you start throwing punches, why don't you ask your dear sister why she pushed me into the pool?" When Sincere looked at her, Lucy shook her head frantically, denying everything and insisting I had slipped and fallen in myself. But Sincere had clearly guessed the truth. He knew Lucy's personality all too well. He flexed his hand, which was probably sore from his fight with Julian, and ordered Lucy in a cold voice to apologize to me. Lucy, her neck stiff with defiance, initially refused. But seeing the increasingly dangerous look in Sincere's eyes, she reluctantly muttered an apology. I gave a cold laugh and said sarcastically, "I wouldn't dare accept. I just hope Miss Marsh will stay far away from me in the future." Julian reached out to steady me as I swayed, his eyes flashing with anger as he saw my pale face. Birds of a feather flocked together. "Mr. Thorn, you're becoming more like a rabid dog every year." That insult hit two birds with one stone. Sincere, unable to bear the loss of face, grabbed Lucy and stormed off. From the looks of it, Lucy was going to be grounded for a while. As my gaze returned, I realized I was so cold my body was almost numb, and my hands and feet were like ice. Julian, who had jumped in to save me, wasn't much better off. He had his assistant bring clean clothes. We both changed and left the banquet hall. On the way home, he kept blaming himself for not protecting me, for letting me get into an accident. I shook my head. "It's not your fault. Lucy didn't come after me because of you." Julian felt my forehead with the back of his hand. Seeing that I didn't have a fever, he relaxed a little. If I hadn't come up with this stupid idea, you wouldn't have run into her. When I tried to argue, Julian gently covered my mouth. Since you won't accept my apology, let me make it up to Chloe. She mentioned to Aaron that she wanted to go on a picnic. I'll take you all. A few days later, on Saturday, Julian arranged to take Chloe, Aaron, and me on an outing. He chose a park on the outskirts of the city for the picnic. It was late autumn, and the maple leaves in the park had turned a vibrant red, looking like a sea of fire from a distance. The two little ones ran around, picking up beautiful leaves to take home and press. By the time Julian and I had spread out the picnic blanket and called them over to eat, Chloe was staring at Julian. She asked in a small, curious voice, "Aaron, didn't you say your daddy is always busy and never plays with you?" Aaron also scratched his little head in confusion. "Yeah, this is the first time Daddy has ever taken me out to play." Julian, overhearing the children's conversation, stroked his son's head and apologized with a smile. "Daddy was wrong. From now on, I'll take you and Chloe out to play more often, okay?" Aaron's eyes lit up with joy, and he hugged his father, nodding enthusiastically. Okay, Chloe happily went over and gave Julian a hug too, saying shyly, "Thank you, Uncle Julian." Julian gently tweaked her little nose, and our eyes met in a shared smile. Everyone had a wonderful time that day, and I felt a long overdue sense of relaxation. Unfortunately, the peace didn't last long. A few days after the picnic, Sincere Thorne showed up at my coffee shop again, slamming a stack of photos down in front of me. They were pictures of Julian and me playing with the kids. My heart sank. I had suspected Sincere had someone watching me, but I didn't think he'd be so blatant about it. I sighed with frustration. "What is the meaning of this, Mr. Thorne?" Sincere was furious. He pointed at a photo of Julian and me holding hands and demanded, "Didn't I warn you to stay away from Julian Croft? You let him kiss you, and now you're helping him raise his child. Victoria Sterling, you killed my child with your own hands, and now you want to be a stepmother to Julian Croft's son. Do you think I'm dead?" I almost laughed at his twisted logic. CPR was a kiss now, and what did he mean, I killed his child? Was he going to pin that on me now too? Even if I wanted to be a stepmother to Aaron, that's my choice. What business is it of yours? What right do you have to control everything? Are you trying to become a matchmaker? I tried to walk past Sincere and leave. Thanks to this psycho, I wouldn't be able to open for business today either. But he grabbed my arm, dragged me into a car parked on the street, and locked the doors. I fought him the whole way, leaving several scratches on him, but he seemed oblivious to the pain, silently and forcefully taking me to a villa. Chapter 11. Sincere Thorne dragged me straight to the third floor, threw me onto his bed, and then pressed his body down on top of me. "Why do you insist on making me angry? Victoria Sterling, you brought this on yourself." He gripped my chin fiercely, his eyes bloodshot. "Let go of me, you brute." I desperately tried to kick him where it counted, but he used his body to pin me down completely. The weight of a grown man was crushing me, making it hard to breathe. Sincere ignored my struggles, his voice a harsh growl. "I gave you chance after chance to admit you were wrong. Why do you always have to defy me? If you just bowed your head, I would have let you go. Why do you insist on fighting me?" I stopped moving and let out a chilling laugh. "Admit I was wrong." "What did I do wrong? I was just young and foolish, falling in love with the wrong person." "I was wrong, and I've paid the price. My dad is gone, my family is bankrupt, and I did as you said and got rid of the child. Isn't that enough? You've been harassing me all this time because you can't stand that your little lapdog won't lick your boots anymore, right? Sincere Thorne, how many times do I have to tell you before you understand? I don't love you anymore." Sincere's eyes turned crimson, and he gasped for breath as if he couldn't bear my words. "Victoria Sterling, you are only allowed to love me for the rest of your life. I forbid you from not loving me," I sneered, looking at him with mockery. "Are you going to tell me you've fallen in love with me now? Have you forgotten how you insulted me? $100,000 to buy the life of the child in my womb? You knew my family was bankrupt, that I had no choice but to take that money to save my father's life. And yet you still said my eyes were full of greed, that I was cheap and disgusting. A man like that had no right to demand my love." The disgust in my eyes stung Sincere deeply. He roared, losing control. "Who told you to actually go through with it? You could have taken the money and not gotten rid of the child, Victoria Sterling. You owe me this." I stared at him in disbelief, unable to process what I was hearing. How could someone so shameless exist in this world? And Sincere had the audacity to continue. "You owe me a child, you have to give me one back." I felt like I was going crazy. He was truly driving me mad. In that moment, I didn't care about the consequences. I just wanted to kill the man who had destroyed my family. I started to struggle wildly, kicking, hitting, and biting him, digging my nails into his face and drawing blood. Sincere cursed in pain. He didn't stop my assault. Instead, he started tearing at my clothes. My shirt was quickly ripped, exposing a large patch of pale skin. Sincere's hand then moved to my skirt, pulling it off. "Get off, let go of me." My final scream was muffled by his kiss. He pulled my body into his large hand gripping my waist tightly. I didn't understand why Sincere Thorn was doing this to me. 5 years ago, he was so disgusted by me, he couldn't even stand the sight of me. Now, he wanted to be intimate. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably, and my whole body trembled. The salty tears flowed into my mouth, and he must have tasted the bitterness too, because he finally lifted his head. His voice was hoarse. "Why are you crying? Isn't this what you wanted?" My eyes were numb and weary as I looked at him. "Do you think I would want this?" Sincere gripped my chin and snorted. "Isn't this what you used to beg me for? Victoria, I know you've always been very fond of me." I showed no reaction to his words, my face a mask of annoyance. "Back then, when I said I loved you, you found me disgusting. Now you're saying I can't stop loving you. Sincere Thorn, what do you take me for? Your dog? You'd better not force me to hate you. If you dare to touch me, I will only ever hate you and be disgusted by you for the rest of my life." Sincere's brow furrowed, and his movement stopped. After a long silence, he let go and stood up. "What a buzzkill." I immediately scrambled to a corner, wrapping myself in the bedsheet. I watched warily as Sincere walked over to me. Unlike my disheveled state, he was still impeccably dressed, apart from his messy hair and the scratches on his face. Sincere looked down at me for a long time, then left without a word. He locked the door from the outside and took my phone with him, leaving me completely cut off from the world. I scanned the room helplessly. The door was locked and we were on the 3rd floor. There was no way out. I couldn't go back. Mom must be worried sick. And Chloe, she had slept with me every night since she was a baby. Not seeing me, the little girl would surely be crying her eyes out. Unable to find a way out, I began to pound on the door in desperation, begging Sincere to let me go. It wasn't until evening that he appeared again, bringing a new set of clothes for me. Sincere knew I had been banging on the door all afternoon. He threatened me calmly. "Should I bring your mother and Chloe here to keep you company?" I hadn't eaten all day and was completely exhausted. I grabbed a book from the bedside table and threw it at him. He dodged it easily. I was too weak to even shout anymore, just glaring at him feebly. "You bastard! What right do you have to interfere in my life? What right do you have to threaten me?" Seeing my state, Sincere actually managed a smile. "I just had someone check on your house. Your mom and Chloe are quite worried about you. Oh, by the way, Julian Croft sent you a message on your phone. I've already replied for you. After all these years, you still use your birthday as your lock screen password." I trembled with rage, glaring at him. "What will it take for you to let me go?" Sincere's smile was chilling. His hand gently caressed my cheek, like a venomous snake slithering over my skin. "Your performance earlier was subpar." I wasn't satisfied. At that moment, I wished I could kill him with my glare. But he seemed completely unfazed, even leisurely lighting a cigarette. Halfway through, he suddenly crushed it out in frustration and said coldly, "Victoria Sterling, my patience is limited." I understood what he meant. He wanted me to bow my head, to beg him humbly like I did 5 years ago. Seeing my hesitation, he added slowly, "Chloe is crying her heart out. Don't you feel bad?" His gaze lingered pointedly on my lips. The hint couldn't have been more obvious. I looked at my own pale, helpless face reflected in Sincere's dark pupils. With a sense of despair, I closed my eyes and slowly leaned in. Chapter 12. But just as my lips were about to touch his, he suddenly gripped my jaw, stopping me. His voice was thick with suppressed anger. "Drop the virtuous act, it's nauseating." I was exhausted. I asked numbly, "What do you want from me?" Sincere's fingers gently caressed my face, his voice as soft and seductive as the serpent tempting Eve. I want to see the Victoria Sterling from that night 5 years ago. You can do that, can't you? I clenched my fists and under his searing gaze, leaned in again. The closer I got to him, the more my body trembled uncontrollably. At the last moment, just before our lips met, I broke. I really can't do it. I steeled myself and looked up at Sincere. If you want to keep humiliating me like this, you might as well just kill me. His expression changed instantly. A look of wild, unchanneled rage and pain twisted his face for a moment. The next second, he furiously grabbed an ashtray and hurled it against the wall. The sound of shattering ceramic echoed along with his anguished roar. Victoria Sterling, where is the girl who used to beg me to love her? Why are you playing the saint now? I answered without a trace of emotion. You said it yourself, that was then. I don't love you anymore. Pain and regret flashed in Sincere's eyes. He roared at me like a wounded, cornered animal. You are not allowed to not love me, I forbid it, how strange. I was the one locked up, unable to leave. I had no energy to delve into the reasons for Sincere's anguish. I closed my eyes. Then just kill me. Carve, she once loved Sincere Thorn on my tombstone. Even if you kill me, I will never love you again. Even if we did sleep together, I'd just treat it as a dog bite, as long as you let me go afterward. Sincere's pupils contracted, and his face turned deathly pale. He seemed unable to believe what he had just heard, muttering, "You hate me that much." I took a deep breath. Yes. From the moment I lay on that operating table 5 years ago, I began to hate you completely. You drove my child and my father to their graves. Sincere Thorn, what right do you have to think I don't hate you? Hearing this, his expression darkened, and he seemed to fall into a daze. I calmed myself and continued. Before the procedure, the doctor told me that if I went through with it, given my physical condition, I might never be able to conceive again. So your demand for me to give you a child back, I can't do it. That was why I had adopted Chloe. Over the years, watching her grow up bit by bit, the heavy stone of guilt that had been pressing on my heart finally loosened, allowing me to breathe. It wasn't so much that Chloe needed me, but that I needed her more. Only when I held her small body as I slept could I avoid waking up in the middle of the night, only to sit there until dawn. I thought I could recount those painful experiences calmly, but I found my heart still ached as if it were splitting apart. Sincere stood frozen, listening motionlessly as I finished my brutal tale. After a long time, he suddenly laughed. I wasn't sure if it was my imagination, but I thought I saw a glint of tears in his eyes. Then he turned and walked out of the bedroom, locking the door from the outside once more. I didn't want to stay here for another minute. My mom and Chloe were waiting for me at home. I had to get home now. With a sudden burst of strength, I tore the bedsheets and duvet cover into strips, tying them together to make a long rope. I secured one end to the solid wood desk and began to climb down from the window. But the rope was too short. I was left dangling from the end, still a good 6 feet from the ground. Just then, Sincere, remembering I hadn't eaten, returned with food. He didn't see me in the room, then noticed the rope. He dropped the bowl in a panic and rushed to the window. Seeing me hanging in midair, he started pulling the rope up, hissing through his teeth, "Victoria Sterling, are you insane? Do you hate being with me that much?" I ignored him, glanced at the lawn below, and steeling myself, let go. I twisted my ankle upon landing, but I gritted my teeth, got up, and ran. Fortunately, Sincere had been confident that the locked door was enough to keep me in, so there were no guards at the main gate. I escaped without any trouble. "Victoria Sterling, how dare you run?" I limped out of the villa complex. Just as I reached the main road where I could hail a cab, I heard Sincere's footsteps getting closer behind me. In a panic, I didn't even look at the road and dashed across. I hadn't taken more than a few steps when a piercing screech of brakes filled the air. At the same time, I heard Sincere scream my name in a heart-wrenching cry. I turned my head. The glare of oncoming headlights blinded me. My heart sank. Just as I thought I was about to be pulled under the car, the world spun. Sincere had tackled me to the ground, holding me as we rolled over and over several times. His hands protected my head the entire time. I couldn't see anything, only hear his suppressed groans of pain. Thankfully, the driver had managed to brake in time, but Sincere was still injured. The driver stopped the car and rushed over to check on us, helping call 911 to get Sincere to the hospital. On the way, he clung to my hand, refusing to let go no matter how I struggled. His leg was bleeding heavily, and his face was pale with pain, but he still asked me, "Are you hurt?" I shook my head gently, my emotions in turmoil. "I'm fine." Sincere was so weak it seemed even speaking was difficult. After a long moment he whispered, "That's good." Chapter 13. Sincere Thorne was in the emergency room for a long time. Having not eaten, I nearly fainted from low blood sugar outside the ER. A passing nurse gave me a piece of candy, insisted I go eat, and even helped treat my sprained ankle. After a distracted meal, I returned to my post outside the emergency room, waiting in anxious silence. Despite the cold weather, I was covered in a cold sweat, likely from the shock. I leaned my head back against the hospital wall, my thoughts a tangled mess. To be honest, I never, ever expected Sincere to jump in and save me. I thought that even if he no longer hated me, his feelings were just a fleeting sense of possessiveness. But his actions, it seemed like he might actually have some genuine feelings for me, and that made things complicated. The two of us, we were a messy, tangled account that could never be settled. After what felt like an eternity, the doctor finally came out. I rushed forward to ask about Sincere's condition. The doctor said he was stable for now, but he had a mild concussion and a fractured left leg, which would require a cast and a period of rest. Only then did I let out a breath of relief and enter the room. The usually imperious Mr. Thorne was now lying on a sterile white bed, his head wrapped in bandages, his lips pale. He looked incredibly vulnerable. He heard my limping footsteps, weakly opened his eyes, and managed a faint smile. "Victoria, I'm glad you're okay." In that moment, I thought, if something happened to you, I would never forgive myself for the rest of my life. Sincere's heartfelt confession made my throat feel tight. I closed my eyes, and after a few seconds of hesitation, I said what was on my mind. "Thank you for saving me today, I'm grateful. But if you hadn't locked me up, none of this would have happened. So in the end, you brought this on yourself." Sincere's expression darkened, and a bitter smile touched his lips. "You're right. I was wrong. I was wrong from the very beginning, 5 years ago, for blaming you for Lillian's death. If I hadn't pursued Lillian, if I'd had the strength to protect her when my family pressured us, if I hadn't caused her to fall into a depression after our breakup, she wouldn't have seen us and been pushed to take her own life. For the past 5 years, I've been taking my anger out on you. I'm sorry. When you told me you couldn't have children anymore, I felt heartbroken. All this time, I've been making trouble for you because I'm a pathetic fool. I couldn't stand seeing you smile at other men. I couldn't stand how cold you were to me, as if the Victoria Sterling who once loved me so deeply had never existed. Victoria, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just hope you'll give me a chance to make it up to you. Can you? I never thought the proud and arrogant Sincere Thorne would ever admit his mistakes, especially about who was truly responsible for Lillian's death. It moved me, just a little. 5 years ago, when he had pushed me to the brink, I had collapsed and cursed him, calling him a coward who couldn't protect Lillian himself and instead blamed me. I remember crying and laughing hysterically, pointing at his nose and screaming, "Sincere Thorne, if you hadn't chased after her, would your family have targeted her? Her depression had nothing to do with me, did it? Wasn't it all because of you and your family?" Back then, Sincere had gone mad, grabbing my throat and telling me to shut up. And now, 5 years later, he was finally agreeing with what I had said. But the Victoria Sterling of 5 years ago might have needed his apology and compensation. The woman I was today did not. That's not necessary, Sincere Thorne. The only thing I want is for you and Lucy Marsh to stay out of my life from now on. That would be the best compensation you could ever give me. After leaving the hospital, I rushed home. The moment Chloe saw me, she threw herself into my arms and burst into tears. I saw that the delicate skin around her eyes was red and raw from crying, and I knew she hadn't stopped while I was gone. My heart ached for her. My mom's eyes were red too. She hugged me and cried for a moment, then wiped her tears and insisted on dragging me to the police station to file a report. I quickly stopped her. "He won't bother us again, Mom, don't worry." My mom looked at me doubtfully. "Can you trust his word?" Chloe, exhausted from crying, was dozing on my shoulder. I patted her back and said, "He's lying in a hospital bed right now. You can rest assured." My mom's eyes instantly lit up. "That's wonderful finally. That scoundrel is getting what he deserves. When did the doctor say he'll be better?" My mom's reaction made me want to laugh and cry. but my heart felt lighter than it had in years. The event that had changed my life 5 years ago could finally be put behind me. I wasn't the schemer who slept with Sincere Thorne, nor the woman who drove Lillian Marsh to her death. I was just Victoria Sterling. Sincere stayed in the hospital for a while. I didn't visit him once. He, on the other hand, sent his assistant with numerous gifts, designer bags, jewelry, and imported toys for Chloe. I returned them all, unopened. Julian, however, went to the hospital every few days. Not to visit, but specifically to see Sincere in his pathetic state. Every time he came back, he couldn't help but share. Watching him lie there, seething with anger but unable to get up and punch me, it's just so satisfying. During this time, my relationship with Julian grew stronger. In the business world, he was decisive and formidable. But when he bickered with Sincere, he seemed more childish than Aaron and Chloe. I told him not to gloat so much. He just said, "That scumbag bullied you. A single broken leg is getting off easy. If it weren't for this accident, I would have broken both his legs for you." I froze for a moment, a warmth spreading through my chest. It felt good. I finally had a friend who wouldn't abandon me because of Sincere Thorne's pressure. 2 months later, Sincere's leg had mostly healed. The moment he was discharged, he came to my coffee shop. My mom brandished a broom at him. "If you harass my daughter again, I swear I'll break your other leg." He didn't get angry. Instead, he humbly apologized to my mom, saying he had been wrong, that he had been a brute. My mom took a few steps back in surprise and whispered in my ear, "Honey, do you think he hit his head too hard?" I patted my mom's arm and told her to go back to work, then turned to Sincere and said he didn't need to be so servile. He looked at me with an unprecedented tenderness, his eyes so soft it seemed they could melt. "I'm doing this because I want to. You don't need to feel burdened." "This man," I sighed and rubbed my forehead. "You've misunderstood. I don't feel sorry for you. I just think what you're doing is meaningless. I'm not touched. I just find you bad for business." Sincere flinched, and his eyes gradually reddened. "Victoria, what do I have to do for you to forgive me?" I gave him a humorless smile and pushed him out of the coffee shop. "If you keep disrupting my business like this, I'm going to hang a sign that says, 'No dogs or Sincere Thorne allowed.'" After that day, Sincere obediently stayed out of the shop. But whenever he had the chance, he would wait outside, catching me when I opened and closed to exchange a few words. No matter what I said or how I scolded him, he stubbornly continued his one-man apology tour. The consequence of this was that Lucy went crazy again. Chapter 14. Her depression had been relapsing, so she'd been recuperating at home. She hadn't even known Sincere was in the hospital. She'd been kept completely in the dark. She constantly complained about why Sincere wasn't visiting her, why he had abandoned her. In the past, no matter how big a mistake she made, a little tantrum and a few words about having no family would always bring Sincere back to her. But this time, after hearing his assistant's report, Sincere just smoked his cigarette and said nonchalantly, "How much trouble has she caused over the years? Bullying classmates at school, tormenting anyone she didn't like, treating herself like a princess and everyone else like her servants. Who cleaned up her messes every single time? I did. I've done more than enough for her. Tell her to start behaving. If she gets into trouble and ends up in jail, I won't be bailing her out again." The assistant had no choice but to relay the message to Lucy. That very day, Lucy snuck out of the villa Sincere had set up for her and burst into my coffee shop, screaming hysterically at me. "You tramp, it's all because of you. That Sincere doesn't want me anymore. He won't even see me now. Are you satisfied?" She tore at her hair, sobbing uncontrollably. "Why did you have to come back? Why are you trying to steal him from me? He's never even touched me. Why would he touch a filthy woman like you?" She glared at me, her eyes bloodshot. "It's all your fault. Everything was fine when you were gone. Why didn't you just die abroad?" I hadn't said a single word. She had carried on the entire conversation by herself. She probably didn't have depression. It was more like schizophrenia. Lucy's last words sounded dangerous. I warily reached for my phone to call the police, but she suddenly pulled a fruit knife from her bag and lunged at me. Lucy swung the knife like a madwoman, a twisted grin on her face. "I'm going to ruin that face of yours. Let's see how you seduce Sincere then." I dodged a few of her wild swings, but my back soon hit the counter, and I had nowhere else to retreat. I grabbed her wrist with all my might, trying to stop the blade from reaching my face. I don't know where the lunatic got her strength. I used every ounce of mine to resist, but the tip of the knife inched closer and closer to my face. Lucy's eyes were bloodshot, her face contorted in a crazed, triumphant smile, as if she could already picture my face slashed and ruined. I gritted my teeth. As my strength began to fail, my arms started to tremble. Sweat dripped into my eyes, stinging them, but I couldn't wipe it away. Just as I was about to despair, Julian, who had been passing by on his way to discuss weekend plans for the kids, noticed the chaos inside. He slammed on his brakes, rushed in, snatched the knife from her hand, and pinned Lucy to the ground. Saved, I collapsed to the floor, completely spent. I looked at Lucy, who was now utterly consumed by her madness, writhing and screaming curses, and shakily dialed 911. The police arrived quickly and put Lucy in handcuffs, leading her to their car. At the station, Lucy sat in the interrogation room, still screaming hysterically at me. My ears were numb. Julian frowned in disgust, then reached out and covered my ears for me. My strength hadn't fully returned, so I could only offer him a weak, grateful smile. Sincere arrived just as Lucy's interrogation was ending. When she saw him, she burst into tears and tried to throw herself at him, but he pushed her away. Sincere walked straight to me, grabbed my shoulders, and asked urgently if I was hurt. I summoned my remaining strength and pushed his hands away. "I'm fine," but Julian's hand got a little cut. Only then did Sincere look at Julian. He frowned. "What are you doing here?" Julian had gotten a small cut while disarming Lucy. He held up his bandaged hand and waved it in front of Sincere. "Your dear sister doesn't play nice, does she? Shouldn't Mr. Thorne compensate me for my medical expenses?" Sincere's mouth twitched. Since neither Julian nor I were seriously injured, Lucy couldn't even be charged with aggravated assault. Coupled with her documented mental illness, the police couldn't do much. By the time we finished the paperwork and left the station, Lucy was still crying to Sincere, insisting that I had bullied her. Sincere looked at my pale, shaken face, and his voice grew heavy. "Lucy, can you just stop it?" Lucy, noticing his gaze had been on me, glared hatefully in my direction, looking like she wanted to eat me alive. Julian frowned and pulled me behind him, his voice laced with an uncharacteristic impatience. "Mr. Thorne, your sister's mental state is highly unstable. I suggest you get her to a psychiatrist." He was speaking the truth, but Lucy was so enraged she started jumping up and down, shrieking, "How dare you say I'm sick? It's Victoria Sterling who seduced Sincere a few days ago. She was trying to climb into his bed. She's shameless, and you can't even say it." Slap before I could even respond, Sincere had struck her across the face. Lucy clutched her cheek, staring at him in disbelief. You hit me for this tramp?" Sincere's voice was cold. "Watch your mouth. The only reason I've put up with you for so long is because of Lillian. If I hear you insult Victoria again, don't blame me for what happens next." Lucy sobbed until her body shook, but Sincere didn't comfort her. Heartbroken, she stumbled back a few steps, then covered her face and ran off. A few days later, we heard that Lucy's depression had worsened, and she had been readmitted to the hospital. I couldn't help but think about how Lillian had been such a gentle and kind person, while her sister was arrogant and caused trouble everywhere. Now she had clearly angered Sincere. Her future was not looking bright. Julian told me I was too soft-hearted. "Seriously, she almost ruined your face and you feel sorry for her?" He paused for a moment, then asked, "Do you know why Sincere Thorne and Lucy Marsh dare to treat you like this?" I looked at him, confused. Julian's gaze was intense. He took my hand and placed it on his chest. "Because you need a powerful man to have your back, and I am that man." His gaze was so heated it made my heart beat faster, and my hand was on his chest. Honestly, Mr. Croft was in incredible shape. If he was trying to use his good looks to win me over, it would be hard for anyone to resist. But if he was just doing this to get back at Sincere, this seemed a bit extreme. Thinking of this, I asked hesitantly, Are you doing this just to annoy Sincere Thorne?" Chapter 14. Part 2. Julian looked as if he'd been struck by lightning, his expression twisting for a moment. "Do you really think I'd gamble with my own marriage just to spite that Thorne fellow? The position of Mrs. Croft isn't something just anyone can fill." As he spoke, I could feel the muscles in his chest vibrating under my hand. Just as my mind went blank from the sensation, he added, "And besides myself, haven't you noticed how much Aaron likes you? He's always hugging and kissing you whenever he sees you. If we were together, you have no idea how happy he and I would be. So, he was looking for a stepmother for his son. A strange sense of disappointment settled in my heart. I pulled my hand back and managed a weak smile. Well, I can still spend time with Aaron and Chloe now. We don't have to be together for that. Julian just chuckled, took my hand, and placed it back on his chest. I was just being jealous of Aaron getting all your hugs and kisses. I misspoke. What I mean is, I like you a lot too. Can I join in and play with you all? His eyes were shining in the darkness, full of sincerity and hope. My hand was pressed against his chest, and I could feel his heartbeat. Thump, thump. I felt my own heart skip a beat and my cheeks grew warm. Seeing this, the smile on Julian's lips deepened. Why are you blushing? I turned my head away in embarrassment, staring at the ground and trying to feign composure. Who's blushing? He suddenly stepped forward and pulled me into his arms. I held my breath, tense, but I had no desire to push him away. The man's warmth enveloped me in the early winter night, bringing a strange sense of security. Neither of us spoke, lost in the quiet embrace. I slowly lowered my head, resting it on Julian's broad shoulder, and gently closed my eyes. Mommy, Victoria. My mom, taking Chloe downstairs to take out the trash, had walked right into the scene. My eyes flew open, and the intimate atmosphere instantly shattered. Oh my God, I had completely forgotten this was right outside my building. I blushed and tried to push Julian away, but he just naturally took my hand and smiled a greeting at my mom. I tried to pull my hand back, but he held it even tighter. Julian's eyes were sparkling with a confidence I didn't know he possessed. Ma'am, Victoria has been through too much. From now on, let me take care of her and Chloe and you as well. Compared to Sincere, who could barely be called my ex, my mom was absolutely delighted with my current beau, Julian. His words had struck a chord with her, and she was now beaming. Yes, of course I can rest easy leaving Victoria with you. The way she said it, you'd think Julian and I were already getting married. I sighed in exasperation. Mom, a little restraint, please. My mom paid me no mind, instead insisting on pulling Julian upstairs to our apartment. She immediately started playing hostess while subtly interrogating him about our situation. Julian was more than happy to cooperate, answering her questions even more enthusiastically than she asked them. I watched the two of them chatting animatedly on the sofa, covering my face in my hands. This guy, Julian, when had he ever sat up so straight? He looked like a proud peacock showing off its feathers. But you had to admit, Julian was good. He had only been in our home for 2 hours, but he had already won over not just my mom, but Chloe too, who was now happily calling him Daddy Julian. I immediately covered Chloe's mouth. After seeing Julian off, I emphasized to her again, "You can't just call Uncle Julian that, you know?" Chloe pulled my hand away and said sweetly, "But Grandma said he's going to be my real daddy soon." I quickly turned to my mom. "Mom, don't say things like that in front of the child." But my mom was unconcerned. She patted my shoulder and threatened, "A son-in-law this good, if you let him get away, I won't forgive you. Sigh, even my own mother is on your side. You're really something, Mr. Croft." Later that night, after everyone was asleep, I called Julian. He couldn't help but laugh after hearing my resentful tone. The sound made my teeth ache. I said threateningly, "Julian, Croft." The laughter on the other end stopped. He cleared his throat and started laying on the charm. "Don't be angry. I was only so happy because your mom is, well, your mom. Her approval means we have a better chance of being together. And I worked really hard during those 2 hours with your mom, worrying I'd say the wrong thing and make her dislike me. Don't you feel sorry for me?" Mr. Croft's pathetic tone made me laugh. I played along and comforted him a bit before we said goodnight and hung up. The next few days were busy at the shop, so Julian and I didn't have time to meet, only calling each other each night. By Friday, Julian was eager to ask me out to a movie after work. Just as I was about to close the shop, Sincere Thorne arrived. He looked exhausted, his eyes bloodshot. It had been about 2 weeks since I'd last seen him. Sincere had come to tell me that Lucy, due to her mental health issues, had been committed to a psychiatric hospital. He promised me that what happened last time would not happen again. He had hired experienced caregivers to watch over Lucy. I nodded and asked, "I thought you said it was just depression." Sincere rubbed his temples wearily, his eyes full of guilt. "The doctor said she has severe delusions and aggressive behaviors." These are all symptoms of a serious mental illness. And during her treatment, Lucy remembered something. Back then, Lillian came to the hotel because Lucy was the one who told her. That day, Lucy knew I was at the bar. She skipped class to find me, but she saw us. Then she followed us to the hotel and sent the location to Lillian. And when Lillian jumped, Lucy was hiding downstairs. She saw the body. The doctor said Lucy couldn't handle the shock and repressed the memory. Victoria, I'm sorry. For what happened back then, I was completely wrong. Sincere's eyes were red. He looked at my stunned face and reached out to grab my hand. I promise, I will make it up to you and your mother. No one will ever be able to hurt you again. I snapped out of my shock, a mix of vindication and sorrow washing over me. I frowned and pulled my hand back. Mr. Thorne, please have some self-respect. My boyfriend won't be happy to see this. Sincere's face changed instantly. He asked urgently, when did this happen? Who is it? It's me. Do you have a problem with that, Mr. Thorne? Julian had gotten off work early to pick me up for our movie and saw Sincere harassing me again. He strode over, put his arm around me, and proudly declared his claim to Sincere. Sincere's face went white. His eyes were glued to Julian's arm around my waist, his voice hoarse. You two are together? Julian raised an eyebrow. What do you think? Has your eyesight gone bad too, Mr. Thorne? Sincere ignored him, his red-rimmed eyes fixed on me. Seeing that I had no reaction to Julian's embrace, he was practically consumed with jealousy. Victoria, tell me, do you really like him? I was thinking about how to phrase my answer and didn't reply immediately. I felt Julian's arm tighten around me. I looked up at him. The man's eyes were full of anticipation, like a dog about to wag its tail. I forced back a smile and nodded firmly. He's very good to me. He's worth liking. I felt Julian secretly let out a breath of relief, his posture relaxing. My smile finally broke through. I couldn't believe how nervous he was. Hearing my words, Sincere looked utterly defeated. He staggered back a few steps, then turned and walked away, his face pale. His retreating figure was heavy and desolate, but my heart felt nothing. The past should stay in the past. It was time for me to start a new life. Chapter 15. Julian moved in front of me, blocking my view with a pout. How long are you going to stare? Isn't your boyfriend much more handsome than him? Was he jealous? I couldn't help but smile, holding up my hand to show the number 5. Mr. Croft, are you 5 years old? Why are you being so childish? Julian's eyes lit up as he looked at my hand waving in front of him. Just as I was about to pull it back, he quickly grabbed it and brought it to his lips for a kiss. The warm breath and soft touch sent my heart racing. I tried to pull my hand away, but he held it even tighter. Julian looked at my reaction and raised an eyebrow with a smug expression, as if pleased with his successful seduction. Then, with his other hand, he wrapped his arm around my waist, pulled me into his embrace, and leaned down to kiss me. As our lips and tongues intertwined, it felt as though he had taken control of my very breath. Just as I was running out of air, feeling like I might suffocate, Julian mercifully let me go. He chuckled and tweaked my nose. Silly, remember to breathe through this. How dare he mock me? I blushed and playfully hit him a few times, which only made him laugh harder. He laughed so much that the strength left my hands. Fine, I admit I didn't have much experience with romance. I couldn't blame Julian for that. Taking it out on him wouldn't teach me how to kiss, so we might as well get to the movie theater. We held hands through the movie, and Julian walked me all the way to my apartment building before leaving. I lived in an old walk-up building with no elevator. Since the coffee shop moved to the new location, business had been much better. I should start looking at new apartments soon, maybe one in a building with an elevator. After all, my mom was getting older, and climbing stairs all the time wasn't good for her knees. As I was thinking about moving, I had just climbed 2 flights of stairs when someone grabbed my arm. I thought it was Julian coming back, and a smile unconsciously spread across my face. Why are you? Before I could finish, I turned and saw a very drunk Sincere Thorne. I froze, a headache already forming. What are you doing here? Why did you follow me home again? Sincere seemed not to hear me. He walked over silently and buried his head in my shoulder. The strong smell of alcohol made me wrinkle my nose. Just as I was about to push him away, I heard him choke back a sob. Victoria, I really know I was wrong. Please forgive me, okay? I don't know what to do anymore. I always make you unhappy. I always push you further away. I only realize now how much I loved the way you used to be. Back then, you would always look at me, and when our eyes met, you couldn't help but smile. I love seeing you smile, but I ruined everything. You'll never smile at me again, will you? His whole body was trembling, and my shoulder was quickly soaked with his tears. Who would have thought that the proud, arrogant, sincere Thorn could be so humble and vulnerable? Please, forgive me. Don't be with Julian. I can't take it. The pain is killing me. Victoria, please save me, okay? He held me so tightly it felt like he was trying to merge me into his very bones. I could barely breathe. I gritted my teeth and grabbed his hair. Sincere Thorn, let go of me. He followed the pull of my hand and looked up, his eyes bloodshot and his face stained with tears. I really have fallen in love with you, Victoria. Can you give me one more chance? I stared into his eyes with disgust. Sincere Thorn, I've told you so many times, I don't love you anymore. I am not the person I was back then. How long are you going to keep deceiving yourself? Sincere's body swayed, but he still didn't let go. Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the dark stairwell, followed by a cold, familiar voice. Let her go, Sincere Thorn. Julian was back. Sincere's reaction was to hold me even tighter, his grip on my shoulders so fierce it made me cry out in pain. Seeing this, Julian rushed forward and punched Sincere in the face. The force of the blow sent him staggering back, forcing him to release me. Sincere shook his head, then charged forward without hesitation, throwing a punch that Julian blocked. He immediately followed up with a blow to Julian's stomach. The two tall men wrestled in the narrow stairwell. The motion-activated light flickered on and off with the sound of their fists meeting flesh. I stood on the sidelines, unable to get between them. Not wanting to distract Julian, I held back my cries, waiting for a chance to help. Drunk, Sincere was losing his reason, his blows growing more vicious. Seeing Julian was in danger, I threw my caution to the wind, jumped in front of him, and shouted at Sincere. Stop! Sincere's fist stopped inches from my face, forcing me to squeeze my eyes shut. He looked at me in disbelief, his voice trembling as he asked, You're protecting him? Victoria Sterling, are you not afraid of getting hurt? Why would you jump in to protect him? I answered without hesitation, Julian is my boyfriend. Who else would I protect? The light in Sincere's eyes completely died. He was drunk and had been fighting with Julian for a while. The moment he stopped, all the energy seemed to drain from him. He swayed and leaned against the stairwell wall. I watched Sincere cautiously, assessing his condition. A joyful chuckle came from behind me. I immediately turned and glared at Julian. You're injured and you're laughing? Doesn't it hurt? Julian took my hand and kissed it lightly, a smile on his face. It doesn't hurt. The moment I saw you protecting me, all the pain disappeared. I rolled my eyes at him, annoyed that he was still being a smooth talker at a time like this. If Sincere went berserk again, the two of us probably wouldn't be able to stop him. Julian understood my look but didn't stop. Instead, he shot a provocative glance at Sincere. Why are you still here, Mr. Thorn? Do you want to watch us be all lovey-dovey in front of you? Sincere looked at me standing calmly in front of Julian, a look of complete despair on his face. He finally let out a bitter laugh and turned to leave. Watching him go, I breathed a sigh of relief and then pulled Julian to the hospital to get checked out. Thankfully, aside from some bruises, there were no internal injuries. It was very late when we left the hospital. Julian took me back to his villa and suggested that my family and I move in with him. He saw the hesitation on my face, knelt in front of me, his expression showing clear fear from the earlier events. Tonight, I only came back because I forgot to give you your gift. What if next time I don't come back, and you run into Sincere when he's lost his mind again? Even though that Lucy woman is locked up in a mental hospital, Sincere isn't. If he goes crazy and kidnaps you again like last time, you won't have a chance to escape by jumping out a window. Hearing him bring up my previous imprisonment, my eyelashes fluttered, but I still didn't agree. It wouldn't be right. We're not married. What would it look like if we all moved in? Julian leaned in and smiled, looking like a big, tail-wagging dog. Are you hinting that I should make it official? Seeing him deliberately tease me, I turned my head away in a huff. When Julian saw that his teasing had made me angry instead, he laughed and hugged me, begging for forgiveness. Don't be mad. I want to make you officially mine. I can't stand the thought of anyone else thinking you're single and trying to pursue you. One sincere thorn is more than enough to make me jealous. I bit my lip, trying to suppress a smile, but still said nothing. Wherever I turned my head, Julian followed. After a few turns, my head was spinning, but Julian's gaze remained as intense as ever. I sighed in defeat and turned back to face him. Our eyes met for a moment, and then we both burst out laughing. In the middle of our laughter, Julian suddenly let go of me, knelt down on one knee, and took my hand. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched him pull a box out of nowhere. He opened it to reveal a diamond ring and looked up at me with anticipation. "Victoria, I love you. Will you marry me?" Faced with this tangible happiness, I hesitated for a moment. But marriage isn't just about us. There are your parents, my mom, Chloe, Aaron. Julian looked completely confident, winking at me smugly. Of course, I've arranged everything. That's why I dared to propose. Actually, I had a whole proposal planned. I was going to gather all our family on your birthday and propose in front of them. But this moment was just too perfect, and I couldn't help myself. Victoria, even though this proposal isn't as grand as I planned, my feelings are completely genuine. This can just be our private agreement. I will still make sure you say yes in front of everyone. With their blessings, I was both surprised and overjoyed. In a place I never knew, he had already been planning our future. Not long after, on my birthday, Julian kept his promise. My mom and Julian's mom were ecstatic, and they immediately started discussing wedding dates with us. The wedding was quickly set for 2 weeks later. I thought the timing was too rushed, but Julian put on a pitiful act. "If we don't hurry up and have the wedding, what if my wife runs away?" I smiled and cupped his face, saying seriously, "This is the home I fought so hard to come back to. Why would I run away?" Chloe and Aaron were even more enthusiastic about our marriage than we were, fully supporting the plan from the start. After all, they had been the ones to suggest sharing parents. Now that their wish was coming true, they were happier than anyone, clamoring to be the ring bearer and flower girl at the wedding. Julian agreed without hesitation, telling the studio making my wedding dress to prepare 2 sets of outfits for them. While the 2 kids were taken by Julian to try on their clothes, my mom stayed with me to try on my wedding dress. She looked at me in the pure white gown, holding back tears as she touched my face, and said with relief, "Victoria, now that you have someone to love and care for you, Mom can finally rest easy." Chapter 16. The 2 weeks passed quickly. Though the timeline was tight, under the guidance of the professional team Julian hired, everything for the wedding was perfectly arranged. The wedding day itself was bright and sunny. I sat in the dressing room, getting my hair and makeup done, while casually flipping through the guest list. When I saw Sincere Thorne's name, my mind drifted for a moment. Julian had personally delivered his invitation, specifically to see the sour look on Sincere's face. The thought made me smile. So childish. Before the ceremony began, Sincere somehow found his way to the bride's dressing room. He looked much thinner than the last time I had seen him, looking at me in my wedding dress, smiling with happiness as I waited to become another man's wife. Sincere's mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. As I reached for my phone to call security, he finally spoke, his voice hoarse as he asked if I would leave with him. Sincere's eyes were shattered, filled with pleading. "Victoria, if you just nod, I can take you away from here right now." I answered calmly, "Why would I leave with you? Today is my wedding day. The man waiting for me out there is the man I love." Sincere's eyes dimmed. He asked again, unwilling to give up, "Do you really love him? You're getting married in such a hurry. Do you really believe he loves you?" I smiled softly. "He is a good man. He doesn't care about my past. He doesn't mind that I have Chloe, and he doesn't mind that I can't have more children. He listens to every word I say and never belittles me. He comforts me whenever I'm unhappy. How could I not love a man like that? And our wedding isn't rushed. I've seen how much effort he's put into this day over the past 2 weeks. A tight schedule doesn't mean it isn't perfect. Not only has he made every detail of the wedding perfect, but more importantly, we haven't fought once during the entire process. We've communicated calmly and solved problems together. It's this wedding, which you see as rushed, that has made me realize completely that Julian is a man worth loving." Sincere's eyes reddened and his voice trembled. What if I could do all those things you said? I can be just as good as Julian. Victoria, can't you just look back at me?" I shook my head and said without mercy, don't deceive yourself. You can't, and even if you could, it has nothing to do with me anymore. You should do those things for your future partner. Between us, what's lost is lost." Sincere's tears finally fell. He tried to hide his pathetic state from me, but could only manage a bitter smile. He stood a short distance away, silent for a long moment before saying, "I wish you a happy marriage." He didn't wait for my reaction, turning to leave. But at the door, he stopped. "The day Julian gave me the invitation, I begged him to let me have you. I said I would agree to any demand, even give him the Thorn Group's resort project. A profit of hundreds of millions, and he didn't even look at it before refusing. Thinking about it now, maybe that's another reason you chose him. It seems I'll never be like him. My first reaction is never to respect you." After Sincere left, I was lost in thought for a long time. Julian had never mentioned this to me, but with the wedding about to start, I had to put it out of my mind. Soon, I heard the officiant's voice from outside, and the wedding videographer came into my room. Not long after, Julian was also ready. He was a classic handsome man with strong features. Today, his hair was slicked back, every strand perfectly in place, making him look breathtakingly gorgeous. Since my father had passed away, and at Julian's request, we had changed the ceremony. The bride and groom would walk in together. He smiled and walked to my side, tilting his head slightly to invite me to take his arm. This felt a bit familiar. My nerves made my mind wander, and I kept a straight face as I took his arm. The moment I did, I noticed his arm was incredibly tense, like holding onto a rock. I glanced at the camera out of the corner of my eye, then looked up at the man who appeared so calm, trying to suppress a smile. And here I thought he was so composed. As the wedding march played, Julian and I soon reached the officiant. I saw my mom in the audience, wiping away tears. Julian's mother held her hand to comfort her, and soon they were both smiling again. I looked at the empty seat that had been saved next to my mother, suppressed the sting in my eyes, and also managed a small smile. "Dad, Mom, and I are very happy now. Can you see us?" Soon, the ceremony reached the exchange of rings. Our two little flower bearers walked towards us, holding a small basket and scattering petals. Aaron and Chloe's eyes were sparkling. They opened their mouths to shout "Daddy" and "Mommy," but were silenced by a timely reminder from the officiant about their duties. The two little ones put their heads together, pulled 2 boxes from the basket, opened them with their chubby little hands, and placed them in our hands. I couldn't help but stroke their serious little faces, then took a deep breath, extended my hand for Julian to place the ring on my finger, and then took his ring and slid it onto his long finger. Then came the vows and finally the last part. And now the groom may kiss his bride. My heart pounded like a drum. It wasn't our first kiss, so why was I so nervous? Chiding myself, I leaned in slightly towards Julian. His bright eyes were smiling. I felt my face flush, and then my chin was lifted, and a soft touch met my lips. Applause erupted from the audience. Aaron and Chloe had already been taken down by our mothers, their eyes covered tightly. At the entrance of the venue, a man stepped out of the shadows, watching the kissing couple on the stage. Then, just as they opened their eyes, he slipped away. After a long, busy day, Julian and I went home and washed away our exhaustion. As I leaned back on the sofa, enjoying Julian blow drying my hair, I suddenly remembered what Sincere had said earlier. I turned my head to ask him, but he just nonchalantly turned my head back and focused on drying my hair. It was nothing important. I was a bit stunned. "Mr. Croft, hundreds of millions is nothing important? Of course." He touched my dry hair, satisfied, put down the hairdryer, and scooped me up into his arms, heading towards the bedroom. "But right now, our wedding night is what's important." Julian gently placed me on the bed, then lowered himself on top of me. His hands roamed my waist, unable to get enough. It tickled. I laughed and tried to roll away, but he held me down. Julian's eyes had a magical quality. I gasped softly and couldn't help but trace the corner of his eye. Those eyes, tinged with desire, instantly softened. Gentle kisses rained down on me, a night of passion. The next morning, if the 2 kids hadn't come to wake me up for breakfast, I wouldn't have wanted to get out of bed at all. Sitting at the dining table, I was still a bit dazed, mechanically bringing food to my mouth. Chloe, sipping her milk, was amused by my state and giggled. "Mommy, you have really dark circles under your eyes." I shot a glare at Julian, and he immediately smiled and admitted his fault. It's all my fault, my mistake. Aaron, who had been focused on his food, looked up and asked, "Daddy, why is it your fault?" Oh God, this was so embarrassing. I forced a smile and said, "It's nothing, sweetie, hurry up and eat." Under the table, I couldn't resist giving Julian a light kick. He exaggeratedly yelped in pain, looking at me with a pitiful expression. The two kids rushed to his side, bringing him water and puffing out their cheeks to blow on his leg, asking with wide eyes, "Mommy, why did you kick Daddy?" I sighed and rubbed my forehead, my teeth grinding. How was I supposed to explain this? That night, Julian was clingy again, trying to get intimate. I kicked him right off the bed. He lay on the floor by the bed, deliberately putting on a pathetic expression. "Honey, I missed you. How can you turn on me the day after our wedding? Am I not your favorite person anymore? Honestly." I pulled him back onto the bed, thinking with a straight face, I never realized he was such a clingy person. The consequence of my moment of weakness was another sleepless night, and I almost couldn't get up the next day. Thankfully, the two kids were at school this time, so I didn't have to face another awkward morning. The next few days, Julian and I were locked in a nightly battle of wits. When the weekend finally arrived, we declared a truce and took the kids to the mall. Chloe and Aaron held hands, with one holding Julian's hand and the other mine. The two little ones, who had rarely seen both their parents together, found it novel. They kept turning their little heads to look at Julian and me, giggling from time to time. I shook my head at the sight, but held the little hand in mine even tighter. We wandered into a children's clothing store and saw a set of panda-themed family onesies. The two kids' eyes lit up. I thought it was too childish for adults and was just going to have the associate get the kids' sizes for Aaron and Chloe to try on. But Julian loved them, eagerly stopping the associate. "What's so childish about them? They're adorable." He picked out the right sizes, paid for them, had them washed and dried, and then quickly had us all change into them. I had to admit, Julian was handsome enough to make even a onesie look good. It highlighted his long legs and broad shoulders, making the childish outfit look stylish on him. Chloe giggled, covering her mouth as she ran to Julian's side, tugging on his sleeve and whispering, "Daddy, Mommy just told me you're the most handsome." That little traitor, siding with him again. I narrowed my eyes and called out, "Chloe Sterling." Julian hid Chloe behind him and shot me a smug wink. "Don't worry, honey. My handsomeness is for your eyes only." I pretended to roll my eyes in disgust, but the corners of my mouth curled up. So narcissistic. Who wants to look at you? After buying the clothes, it was time for dinner, so we took the kids to the food court. On the way up, we passed Sincere Thorn on the descending escalator. From the moment he saw me, his eyes were fixed on me, unblinking, until I disappeared from his sight. Julian leaned in close to my ear and grumbled, "I know my wife's heart belongs to me, but I still don't like the way he looks at you." I gently twisted his ear, which earned a louder grumble from him. I saw the little heads in front of us start to turn up and quickly press them down, hissing through my teeth, "Julian, Croft, don't push it." The big head on my shoulder instantly straightened up. After his antics, the encounter with Sincere was completely pushed from my mind. But that night I received a message from an unknown number, "Victoria, are you happy?" I didn't reply, I just blocked the number. Of course, I was happy, but that had nothing to do with him. The end.